Hey guys, my name is Safik and welcome to the first ever episode of EDH Showdown. So before we start, I just want to give a quick intro to what this channel is all about. Basically, it's a platform for me to showcase what the EDH or Commander scene is like in Malaysia. So if you guys like this video, please subscribe, please give it a thumbs up, and please share it with anyone who you know who loves EDH. Without further ado, let's get to the showdown. My friend Amsha will be playing his Yennett Cryptic Sovereign deck, and he keeps an opening hand with a Reliquary Tower, Sensei's Divining Top, Temporal Mastery, Plague Wind, Snow-Covered Plains, and a Lightning Greaves, while I'll be playing my Korvold Fae Curse King deck, keeping an opening hand with a Frozen Grip, Mountain, Dictate of Erebos, Dragon Skull Summit, Veil of Summer, Stomping Grounds, and Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. Meanwhile, my friend Shake will be playing his Mairsil the Pretender deck, keeping an opening hand of Watery Grave, Swamp, Isochron Scepter, Serum Visions, and Buried Alive. And finally, we have my friend Azro, who'll be playing his Elsha of the Infinite deck, and he keeps an opening hand with an Island, Sinister Sabotage, Snow-Covered Plains, Mystical Tutor, Azorius Signet, Snow-Covered Island, Expansion Explosion. For the first turn of the game, I play Stomping Grounds, not paying 2 life, and passes the turn to Azro. Azro then plays a Snow-Covered Island, and then he passes the turn to Shake. Shake then plays Watery Grave, paying 2 life, and then he casts Serum Visions. He then draws a card and scries 2 and decides to keep 1 card on top of his library and the other one on the bottom. He then passes the turn to Amsha, who drops the Reliquary Tower and casts Sensei's Divining Top, but not before Azro mental missteps it. Oof. I then play a Swamp and passes the turn to Azro. Azro draws and plays a Snow-Covered Plains before casting Azorius Signet. He then passes the turn to Shake, who plays a Drowned Catacomb and casts Izek's Signet. He then passes the turn to Amsha, who plays a Plains and then casts Lightning Greaves. For the third turn of the game, I play a Woodland Cemetery and passes the turn to Azro. Azro then plays a Wandering Fumarole, which comes to the battlefield tapped, and passes the turn to Shake, who drops a Swamp and then casts Bury Alive. We then fast forward to the whole video with Shake looking for these 3 creatures: Blighted Bat, Soliton, and Aetherling. And then while Shake looks for his creature, Amsha plays Mirrored Landscape tap, passes the turn to me, who plays Dragon Skull Summit, and then passes the turn to Azro, who plays an island and then casts Elsha. Shake then puts the creatures into the graveyard and starts his turn off. He then taps all of his mana to cast Mairsil the Pretender, who upon entering the battlefield, exiles Aetherling from the graveyard with a cage counter on it. He then passes the turn to Amsha, who cracks his Mirrored Landscape to find 2 islands. I then start my turn off by playing Temple of Melody, scrying the card on top and keeping it on top. I then passes the turn to Azro, who plays an island, and then passes the turn to Shake. With nothing to play, Shake then moves to combat and swings to Azro for 4 damage with his commander. Azro then decides to take the 4 damage, and Shake passes the turn to Amsha. Amsha plays a Swamp as his land for the turn and pays 4 mana to cast Nevinyrral's Disc. Not wanting to lose Korvold, who I'm about to cast next turn, I decided to Frozen Grip the Disc. Amsha then passes the turn to me, I play a Mountain and then taps 5 mana to cast Korvold, who upon entering the battlefield forces me to sacrifice a permanent I control, in which I choose the Swamp I tapped for mana earlier. I then put a +1/+1 counter on Korvold and then draws a card. During my second main phase, Shake pays 1 blue to exile Mairsil using Aetherling's ability, and during the end step, Mairsil enters the battlefield and Shake exiles Mirage Mirror from his hand. I then pass the turn to Azro. Azro then draws and then looks at the top card of his library. During his second main phase, Shake then pays 1 blue again to exile Mairsil with Aetherling's ability, and during Azro's end step, Mairsil enters the battlefield and this time Shake exiles Soliton with Mairsil's ability. He then starts his turn. Not casting any spells, Shake instead moves to his combat step and swings at Azro. Azro then blocks with Elsha, but he casts Preordain first from the top of his library. He first scries 2 and then he decides to keep both cards on top, drawing a card. This also makes Elsha a 4/4 since Elsha has prowess. Azro then pays 2 more mana and then casts Arcane Signet from the top of his library. This again triggers Elsha, making her a 5/5. Shake then pays 2 mana to turn Mairsil into Arcane Signet using Mirage Mirror's ability, thus saving Mairsil from dying in the combat. With nothing else to do, he passes the turn to Amsha. Amsha starts his turn off by playing a Terramorphic Expanse, cracking it to find a swamp from his library, putting it onto the battlefield. He then taps all of his mana to cast his commander, Yennett Cryptic Sovereign. He then equips Yennett with Lightning Greaves and swings at me. Yennett's on attack trigger and he casts Diluvian Primordial from the top of his library. He then takes a look at our instants and sorceries in our graveyard and decides to cast Serum Vision first. He draws a card, scries the top 2 cards, decides to keep both on top. He then casts Preordain and this time he bottoms the top 2 cards of his library and then draws a card. He decides not to cast Frozen Grip, forgetting that Azro have some artifacts on his side of the board. Really, Amshar? Really? I then start my turn off by playing Jund Panorama as my land for the turn. I then activate its ability, sacrificing it, which triggers Korvold that draws me a card, and I put a +1/+1 counter on him, before searching for a swamp. I then cast Springbloom Druid, sacrificing a swamp as it enters the battlefield, again triggering Korvold, which draws me another card and puts another counter on him. After searching up for 2 basic lands, I then tap 1 mana to cast Rancor, enchanting Korvold with it. I then move to my combat step and swing at Amsha with my Korvold, sacrificing Springbloom Druid as it attacks, again drawing a card and putting another counter on him. Amsha then takes 10 damage and then I pass my turn to Azro, who on my end step casts Mystical Tutor to look for Enlightened Tutor. And then he used 1 mana from Arcane Signet to cast Enlightened Tutor to look for Sensei's Divining Top. He then untaps, draws the Sensei's Divining Top, and then casts it. He then also casts Mystic Grimoire from the top of his library, and then casts the final piece of his infinite combo, which is Ethereum Sculptor. He then demonstrates to us the loop in which he can tap Sensei's Divining Top to draw a card. He is then able to cast Sensei's Divining Top from the top of his library for free thanks to Ethereum Sculptor. He is then again able to repeat this by tapping the Sensei's to put it on top and draws a card, and then eventually draw out his entire deck. He then has enough mana to cast Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, activate his ability, and win the entire game. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Now, a few disclaimers before I end this video. Number 1, I know that the video ratio was slightly off. There was some weird black bar going at the top, and I hope that you guys can ignore that because that's my fault on positioning in the camera GoPro and also editing it wrongly. Number 2, I'm so sorry that if I sound very boring or uninteresting. I'm still trying to find my flair into presenting and narrating better. And also I'm sorry if I sounded a bit muffled. I'm not trying to make excuses here, it's just that I'm still new to this. And finally, I just want to say that this channel and this video is in no way trying to copy what other channels are doing. I'm just taking them as inspiration, and I'm trying to make my own channel here just a platform to showcase what my playgroup is like, how my playgroup is like, and hopefully I get to go all over Malaysia and see what other playgroups are like and film them as well. So if you guys do like this video, please give it a like, please subscribe to this channel, and please share it with anyone who you know who loves Magic, and hopefully I can make a second episode because this is too hard.